If I asked you about art, you'd probably give me the skinny on every art book ever written. Michelangelo. You know a lot about him. Life's work, political aspirations, him and the Pope, sexual orientation, the whole works, right? I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling. Seen that. If I ask you about women, you'd probably give me a syllabus of your personal favorites. You may have even been laid a few times. But you can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy. You're an orphan, right? Do you think I know the first thing about how hard your life has been? How you feel? Who you are? Because I read Oliver Twist. I can't learn anything from you. I can't read in some book. Unless you want to talk about you. Who you are. Then I'm fascinated. I'm in. But you don't want to do that, do you, Sport? You're terrified of what you might say.
Take me to two places. One is what's going on with your character, because when this guy walks in the room, and then what happens in the relationship? What is it that Sean finally gives Will that makes a difference?
Before the first time he walks in, it's like my wife died a couple of years before. I've been teaching at this place called Bunker Hill Community College. I teach, all different types of psychology classes, but I've kind of withdrawn. I did go to MIT with Stellan's character, but, I chose, he's a Vietnam vet.
Stellan is the math professor, the genius who won the big
prize. The Fields Prize, right. The Fields Medal winner. And basically he chose a life of, working in the neighborhood, working basically in Boston, and working back with the people he grew up with. I mean, in a weird way, he's kind of like, in Matt's character, he wanted to work with the people he knew, and, the community he grew up in. But he's guarded. He's been through a lot. What he offers Matt's character is a perspective. It's like of saying, and like in the first time, when he presses the buttons, when he starts to attack the memory of my wife, it pushes a button that I can't even control myself, and I basically go for him. And I violate the therapeutic relationship in that moment. It's no longer a therapeutic relationship, and that's why, the next session, that speech by the Swan Pond, is essentially saying, okay, I know who you are, you know who I am, and you really, you messed with my life in a huge way. But I want you to know I know who you are, and I know you need some help. And if you want to work on that, I'd love to help you. But it's up to you, and that's why I say it. And then it just begins, this process of the two of them just talking, First couple of times they don't even talk. It's a standoff, where he won't even say anything. And then it works to a point where finally we start, I have to kind of tell him, we ask him a few questions and he tells things and he starts working. Then I start sharing a little bit of myself for some reason with him. The reason probably is that in him you see yourself. He sees in himself, he sees, I see the same mind going, and I see where it could go. It's like that argument that we have with Stellan's character in the bar, where he gives the Einstein thing of, what would Einstein have done if, he didn't need anything, he became this great mind. I said, yes, and also there's another great mind who lived in Montana and who's presently trying to hang himself with his underwear, named Theodore Kaczynski. So it's that idea of, he needs work. There are things, he can have everything. I know he's a genius, that's a given. That's not what I'm there to work on. I'm there to work on the other part of him. The other part is to reach that's his soul, and why at the end I'm just saying to him, what do you want to do? You could do anything, and just bounce there for. But in the end, it's like me. It is father son, but it has all sorts of other elements.
But go ahead.
I was just going to say that he's saying that what you've chosen to exploit in my character is not a flaw. This relationship I had with this woman is not a character flaw. This was an amazing relationship I had, and because I had it, I've really lived. And that's what he tells Will, and essentially Will's only comeback is, well, then why aren't you doing that now? Why have you stopped? And we always felt the characters were parallels. They were both kind of stagnant when they meet each other, and because of this interaction, they end up moving on in a healthy way.
Jump-starting each other in that way. And at the end, it's like you said, the most primal thing is dealing with his childhood. And we have a similar childhood in that sense. And we kind of say, did it happen? Do you ever have experience with this? He has a long family history. I mean, of abuse, and he's foster home. What they used to call him is these the garbage bag kids.
Garbage bag kids.
Because they switch foster homes so many times.
Just
that they
throw
keep
the stuff in the garbage bag.
Yeah, and they're on to the next home. What was it, 10, 15 foster homes in so many years? And it's getting through, it's breaking through to that one place. And as the more you go, the more defensive it is, and even then, it's just the beginning.
And I would argue that he wants to do it, that he wants to have that. He just can't find somebody who's worthy of doing it with,
who could contest him on that on that field.
Right. He needs it like anybody needs it. It just so happens that he's a genius, and he doesn't feel like anybody quite understands him until he meets this guy.
As we were watching this, you said almost verbatim from what you wrote.
Yeah.
Verbatim.
Yeah, that scene, definitely. Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, that verbatim, the hard part isn't having an actor stick to the lines. The hard part is keeping the lines from what you originally write to what it is in its final incarnation. And that speech in particular was something that Ben and I talked out, and I ended up writing it on vacation, just handwriting it out in this journal, and I still have the journal, and it's literally, you could watch Robin do it, and you could sit with this scribbled out journal and kind of read along. It's,
what is it about, I mean, do you look for this kind of role because it gives some balance to the kinds of things that you're going to do?
Yeah, because I love being a supporting part. That, for me, a supporting role is extraordinary for me, because it's two things. It takes the pressure off, but it's also being part of an ensemble. But a role like this, because I like to try and take a turn, like, to do a movie like Flubber, which is a children's movie, no bones about it, and to do something like this, which is totally the other way. To also play a character that is tough, he has his own problems. No, it's a wonderfully complex character, and I love to do that. Yeah, it balances it out. That's why I always keep trying to do as many different types of things as possible, not one particular type of role.
How is it different, better even, than Awakening and Dead Poets Society for you?
Just by the nature of the interaction with Matt's character. I mean, it has elements of Awakenings in the sense of essentially a physician trying to, connect with a patient. It has elements of Dead Poets in the essence of there is a teaching relationship going on. But then there's something else that goes on because it's symbiotic. I mean, there was a little bit of that in Awakenings, but there's an interaction between our characters where as much as I'm working on him, he's reaching me because of my character. In that speech, he lost his wife. She died from cancer, and he's been pulling back from life. And he's very guarded, and he's in his own way very cocooned. And that's why I love the relationship, and it builds that way. And some people said it's a father-son relationship, and it has all these different aspects, which makes it worth doing. I mean, that's when I read it, I went, this is extraordinary. And when you get something like that, it would be insane to pass it up. To say for financial reasons, or you should do big movies. No, big movies have their place. They're wonderful. They're entertainment. This is something else. And we've been finding people who come up to us and just say, thank you, that really touched me. And if you're doing something, that's the most wonderful reward of all. I mean, it really is extraordinary when people just come up to you and say, this movie had really moved me. Or some woman today said she felt like she was going through therapy, and I want to go, yeah, maybe that's too far. But that's when you get a gift like this, and it is, you've got to go with it.